Modeling in Blender is the bread and butter of the program. A common reason to learn how to model is for rendering, game development, and character creation. Look at this graph. For the sake of learning, let's divide models into two sections, characters and non-characters. Characters have their own speedrun and have many different styles, even including animals, realistic or non-realistic. We will focus on everything that's non-character. Since I'm just going to be modeling, I'm going to remove the timeline editor. Examples are the best way to learn anything. However, it's even better when you do something related to your goals. Since I mentioned rendering and game development, I'm going to do some examples that get us close to things that could realistically be modeled. That means no donuts for now. You can model something in one of two ways, by box modeling or by sculpting. Box modeling is manipulating vertices by selecting them and moving them around, executing operations that bridge faces, extrude them, and so on. When you box model with a subdivision surface modifier, it's called hard surface modeling. Now, sculpting is adding material to the model, where you add thousands of vertices to manipulate the mesh, simulating how sculpting in real life works, which means sculpting is in a different video. Let's make something simple like a box crate. You always need references. What I like to do is just drag an image from my folder into Blender. Press Alt-R to reset the rotation and then rotate it so it faces the x-axis. Select it and go to Object Data Properties. Here you can modify the opacity. Also, make sure the orthographic and perspective boxes are checked. Always try to start by making the whole basic mesh. This is a box, so we start with a cube. Then I'm going to extrude all faces in with I to inset, then press I again to inset individual faces. Then make sure the transform pivot point is set to individual origin so we can extrude faces individually. Press E and extrude them inwards. This is the basic shape done. If this box was for a video game, this might be more than enough, since the rest of the details can be filled with textures. If we want to make a nice render of a box, then we might want to go further. Let's separate the interfaces by pressing P and clicking on selection. Now we have two different objects. Let's add 6 loop cuts to every face with Ctrl R. The reason we separate the meshes is because running loop cuts through the faces would also add unnecessary vertices to the frame of the box, which we don't need. Now select all vertices of the inner mesh and press Ctrl B to bevel them. Just one extra segment is fine. Then press E and extrude all faces inwards. To make the support beams, duplicate the box frame. Press slash on your numpad to isolate everything you have selected. We can now use this base to create the beams. Create 6 loop cuts on 4 sides of the frame like this. This is just a setup. Select these 2 faces on the corner and the other 2 on the opposite corner. Press Ctrl E and select bridge edge loops. Then press Ctrl I to invert the selection. Then press X and delete faces. We have some open faces. To close them, select 2 vertices that are next to the open face and just press F. This will automatically detect the open face and fill it. Do the same for the opposite side. If you started from the side that had no face, it would just create an edge and connect both vertices. Press slash to get out of object isolation. We have one beam. Now, all we have to do is duplicate it. When we created these objects, their pivot started in the center of the cube. And since we only modified the geometry, the pivot stayed in the center. So if we duplicate it in object mode and rotate it will rotate from the middle. So press R to rotate, then Z to fix it on the Z axis. Type in 90 and left click. Then press Shift R twice to repeat the action and fill the other side beams. If you want an X-shaped beam, you might see this render issue in the middle where the beams interact. This is called Z-fighting or plane fighting, also known as stitching. This happens because both faces are exactly or even near the same position and both faces try to get rendered first. To fix this, just offset the mesh so the faces don't share the same exact position. You can select all objects and join everything together into a single object with Ctrl J. Before doing so, you can add a bevel to the beams and frame only. Apply the modifier and then join the objects. If you don't want to apply the modifier, just keep your model separated into 2 different objects. Nothing wrong with that. Now, as you can see, we have 2 different models of the same object, a box crate. However, I would use this model for a game and this other model for some boxes that could be in the background of some render. If the box is going to be opened or interacted with very up close in some realistic animation, then in that case it would need a lot more detail. Not necessarily on the mesh, but maybe in its textures. Also, the box seems to be 2 meters in height. Always make your models based on real life measurements. So let's set the origin to its base and scale it down to 1 meter. Then press Ctrl A and apply the scale. Now you know how to make a box. Wait, that's not right. I need you to understand something very clearly. You must know the existence of the many tools that Blender offers, as many as you can. The more tools you know, the more you'll find yourself solving the problems you come across. Here are the most common tools: move, rotate, scale, extrude, inset, edge slide, loop cut, bridge edge loops, separate mesh, isolate, merge, fill, grid fill, join, shrink, or flatten. This one is useful when scaling does not achieve the results you want. Now for modifiers, mirror. This mirrors the mesh. Subdivision surface. It adds subdivisions and smooths the mesh. Array. Duplicates the mesh on an array. Bevel. It bevels the edges. Solidify. It adds thickness to the mesh. Decimate. This reduces the geometry's density. Simple deform. This makes deformations on the mesh relative to a pivot point. Shrink wrap. This wraps the mesh's faces around another mesh. And the lattice modifier. It needs a lattice object to work. It warps the mesh depending on the deformation of the lattice, just like this. Another useful thing for modeling is using curves. You can add curves, extrude nodes, move, scale, or rotate them, then add mesh that follows the curve. Go to Object Data Properties and under Geometry, under Bevel tab, increase the depth. The topology of the curve is driven by the resolution preview and the resolution of the bevel. Know that these modifiers or techniques exist. You're not forced to use them, but just know that they're there. Let's talk about topology. When modeling, you want to keep your model in quads, only squares making up the mesh. Sometimes it's okay to have what's called a triangle fan, but if you put a subdivision surface on this, it won't look good. To fix this, extrude a small amount in, then again, and merge at center. This edge acts as a support loop, and you can keep adding support loops whatever you see fit. Now, topology problems come up when you try to make your mesh have quads only, and if you struggle to do so, check out this topology guide. I'll leave a link to it in the description. Let's use what we've learned, but let's go much faster. I'm going to make a gramophone. Now I'm going to make a trash bin. A chain. A rock. A set of books. The array modifier is doing all the work here. It's pretty cool. Observe how 80% of my actions are driven by 20% of the tools that Blender has. Now, start modeling what you really want to model. Don't wait until you're ready to do so. You were always ready. Thanks for watching.